Hello everyone, hi, welcome to this ultimate Sweden tier list video, jajamensan fan. I've started making YouTube videos about Sweden again and I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice to be able to sort of define what Sweden even is? You know, what does it mean to be Swedish and so on? Am I even Swedish? Goodness me, I don't know. So in order to go about answering this, I did the most internet thing possible. I asked Reddit first, and then I decided to make a tier list. So that's where we are. This is the best way to figure this out, clearly. To make it a bit more interesting, I decided to ask both r/sverige and r/askreddit to get sort of a Swedish perspective on this and also an international perspective. And as you will see, they vary quite significantly, which is really interesting. And as you can also see, I got a shit ton of responses. I even cut some out, but I mean, look at the amount of stuff right here, my goodness. So this might be a very long video. Settle down with some tea or jävla fan julmust eller något. Svenskt. Oh. So first of all, we have the tiers. So at the very top, we have svenskt som fan, which is, incredibly Swedish. Couldn't really be anything else. Very defining of what Sweden is, I suppose. Then we have very Swedish, which is not, textbook Swedish perhaps, but it's still, very Swedish, as the name implies. Kinda Swedish, not quite Swedish, not Swedish at all. And then at the very bottom, we have Switzerland, for reasons we will get to. Okay, so first of all, we have Midsummer, just precis, is the very first one. It's, an obvious one, especially after the movie a couple of years ago. If there was a tier above Svenskt som fan, of course the movie would be above it, Incredibly good representation of our beautiful traditions. And I feel like it would be almost a bit silly to put Swedish Midsummer anywhere other than at the very top at Svenskt som fan. Even though there are many aspects of Swedish Midsummer that are not Swedish at all. For instance, Små grodorna is a French marching song. The maypole is, has like Germanic origins, I think, and stuff like that. But still, it feels like, Sweden has managed to put an equal sign between itself and Swedish Midsummer celebrations. So I think this is right, for sure. This was also one of the few answers that was common in both among Swedish people and internationally. So therefore, it deserves to be at the top, for sure. Next, we have beautiful nature. A couple of different answers here, like clean air, fields of wildflowers, nice forests and a blanket of snow with a moose staring at you. I like that one. Maybe you will be upset with me for this, but this to me belongs in the kinda Swedish tier, just because it's a bit silly, but Swedish nature. There are a couple of unique bits of it, the Swedish archipelago and stuff like that. But then when it comes to just beautiful nature in general, I don't think that Sweden is particularly special because every country has beautiful nature. Because nature itself is very beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, am I too hippie saying that? I don't know. But now we have Ingrid Jävla Bergman, which is a bit of a surprise. I think it would be pretty hard to argue that Swedish celebrities do not belong in at least, very Swedish. She was famous in Hollywood and everything, and she starred in like English-speaking movies or whatever, but still obviously very Swedish, which I guess applies to PewDiePie as well. He was a very common response in r/askreddit, and literally no one mentioned him in r/Sverige. He's clearly also very Swedish, doesn't shy away from the fact at all. One of the most famous Swedish people on the internet, certainly. So up there he goes, fuck yeah, along with Ingrid Bergman. Oh my goodness. All right, the next one is immigration issues. This was also one that was mentioned in both r/Sverige and askreddit, and there were lots of different examples given. I think this belongs in the not quite Swedish. It doesn't go at the very bottom because there are clearly issues that should be taken seriously. But to say that it is, defining of what Sweden is, I think would be a bit defeatist. Bröd och salt. This was a very surprising one as well. I wasn't expecting bröd och salt to be mentioned in the international r/askreddit, but apparently it was. It's like a Swedish cafe chain, and I think it only exists in Sweden, but I'm not sure. Maybe there are some international ones as well, I don't know. And yeah, fuck it, it's a Swedish brand, so very Swedish, just precis. Cold and snow. Sweden is cold, that's right, yes. I mean, sure, I'm not sure if the people on Reddit meant the climate or the people, but I suppose both would be accurate. I'd say that this is kind of Swedish. You do freeze your tits off in winter, of course, but I always found that both the UK and Japan had more like colder feeling winters for some reason, just because houses in Sweden are so well insulated. Yeah, I used the right word. And Swedish summers are not very cold at all. Don't know a lot about it, but the flag is a huge plus. Yay, there it is. We have the first Switzerland. Yay. We'll get to the Swedish flag later, which is also technically, I guess, sort of a plus if you consider Jesus being nailed to a plus. But yeah, the Swiss flag is the plus one. That's not a Swedish one. They killed that. Okay, so we have the first Switzerland. Yay, let's move on to Nils Holgersson. Herregud. Straight to the jävla topp. Selma jävla pisslagerlöv, just precis. Traditional, unique, sort of Swedish children's book going through all the different regions of Sweden. I can't really think of anything more defining, I suppose. It is about Sweden. It's written by a Swedish author. You know, incredibly bloody Swedish. Top tier, clearly. ABBA is next. Just precis. I think this was one of the top 3 most mentioned ones in r/askreddit, which makes sense. I'm gonna be nitpicky here though, because, you know, the music ABBA produced was not necessarily very traditionally Swedish in any way, and one of the 4 members was even born in Norway. My goodness. So definitely not at the very top of the list, but I do think that ABBA, it would be really weird to put ABBA anywhere under very Swedish. So there they go. I'm thinking though that I've heard Americans say that they thought that ABBA was actually an American group. So I don't know. Hesitating to put them in down maybe with kinda Swedish, but nah, I think they, you know, come on, it's fucking ABBA. I guess they're very Swedish. Now, Bass Hunter, I think belongs down in kinda Swedish, because I don't even know who this guy is. Like, I know that he's a musician, but I didn't know that he was Swedish, apparently. I had to look it up, but then, I mean, goodness, look at him. This man looks insanely Swedish. I guess he also deserves to be at the very Swedish tier. Alright, fine. Someone on r/askreddit said Dota, and I don't really understand why. Is it because maybe there's like a famous Swedish team that plays Dota or something? Regardless, I would say this is the first not Swedish at all. Because to me, what the fuck? Dota is not Swedish. Swedengate. They don't feed their guests. My goodness. Okay, so this was a thing a couple of years ago when the internet shat itself because someone accused Swedish people of being rude to guests and not offering dinner to children staying over at a friend's place. And I don't really know. I don't have a strong opinion about this. I think I remember being offered food as a child from other families. So this definitely didn't apply to me, at least. And I think I remember also my parents offering like my friends food when they were staying over. So I don't know. To me, this is not quite Swedish. I'm sure that, you know, it became a big enough it became a big enough phenomenon online that there must be some truth to it, I suppose. Next we have Stockholm itself. Ja men vad fan, det är väl svenskt som in i Norden, Jesus Christ. Like what else could it be? It's the capital of Sweden, for fuck's sake. Though pretty much every Swede who doesn't live in Stockholm considers Stockholm to be this cesspool of out-of-touch, privileged, upper-class assholes, and not particularly Swedish at all. But since I am from Stockholm, I think the complete opposite. I think everything outside of Stockholm is not worth anyone's time. The depressing fucking wasteland. That's right. Okay, moving on. Beautiful blonde women. Jesus Christ. This was the most common answer on r/askreddit. Among international people, when they think of Sweden, the very first thing that most people think about is beautiful blonde women. I mean, I guess I was expecting this, you know, especially from Reddit, I suppose. But it does ignore all the, you know, ugly men with brown hair in Sweden, of which there are many. I think, you know, people like Agneta, is that her name, in ABBA, must have played a big part in spreading this internationally. Maybe some movie stars and stuff as well, I don't know. And, you know, there are many blonde people, I suppose, in Sweden. I can't sit here and look like this and pretend that there aren't. However, I don't agree that Swedes are unusually attractive. Most people kind of look the same here, which I find boring. Not quite Swedish. Ikea, ja men vad fan, herregud. Svenskt som fan, ännu en självklarhet. Just precis. I think this was the second most voted for one as well. It's not only that it is a very internationally famous brand either, it's that, you know, every Swedish household is full of IKEA furniture and IKEA people. Next one is skiing. I'd probably say kinda Swedish about skiing. Next to the snow one, that's good. I've never gone skiing in my entire life. Maybe that's why I only find it kinda Swedish. But it's also not like uniquely Swedish in any way, obviously. Lots of people do ski here, but it is definitely not like a, thing that every Swedish person does all the time. Pirate Bay, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, I suppose. I think it was founded, or like it started in Sweden, didn't it? And also like there's a Swedish political party called Piratpartiet, which is not very big, but it is a party at least. So I would say maybe kind of Swedish for this one too. Next we have okay, boredom and depression. How very jolly. I would rank this quite high actually, but I realize that is perhaps a little silly. Viewers of the channel knows that I find Sweden a bit boring quite often, and especially the long winters I find depressing as all fuck. But I am hesitating to put it in very Swedish. That sounds a bit too gloomy maybe, because I'd also say that most Swedish people are generally quite pleased with their lives, I think. So I think I'm gonna put this in kind of Swedish as well. Yeah, that's fine. Someone thought that Sweden is very rich. Is this because of young royals maybe? Compared to other countries, Sweden is definitely very sort of flat when it comes to money. Generally people are not very poor and not very rich in Sweden. I mean, there are rich and poor people, obviously, but compared to most other countries, the difference between the two is smaller, I would say. But then again, I guess because the general sort of standard of living is very high, I guess Sweden as a country is very rich. So yeah, that I suppose is very Swedish. This surprised me as well. JAS 39 Gripen, the fucking fighter jet that is produced in Sweden. Maybe again, this is sort of skewed because I asked Reddit, because this and also the AK-5 rifle were mentioned. And it is true that Sweden does export a whole bunch of weapons and military equipment and stuff. Peace-loving Sweden is now part of NATO and is exporting a shit ton of weapons. So yeah, I guess this goes into very Swedish as well. Sad as it is, Okay, a complete fucking 180. We have chocolate. That's right. I think we have our second Switzerland, everyone. I mean, Marabou is very nice, but I don't think that the most popular Swedish brand of chocolate is incredibly famous, like outside of Sweden, maybe in Norway. But I think what this person on Reddit was thinking about was Switzerland rather than Sweden, because Sweden is not internationally, like globally famous for its chocolate, but Switzerland is. So I think that should go there. Moving on. Thrillers, fuck yes. I think, yeah, they're like the girl with the dragon tattoo, and others have become internationally famous, I suppose. I would put Thrillers in kind of Swedish, I think. Just because when I think of that kind of movie or series or whatever, I mainly think of like Scandinavian thrillers and dramas rather than specifically Swedish. Next we have pop music, which is kind of strange for a terribly small country like Sweden, but Swedish pop music is insanely famous internationally. Max Martin alone is just insane. I looked this up. He's written or produced 27 #1 singles in the like Billboard Hot 100 for artists like Ariana Grande, Taylor Swift, The Weeknd, lots of people. Only surpassed by Paul McCartney with 32, by the way. So pop music is definitely up here in very Swedish, I would say. Snus fan. Just precis. Yeah, Swedish people do snusa quite a lot, don't they? I would say this is kind of Swedish just because there's lots of other countries that do snus as well. Next we have the Swedish flag. Yay, not the Swiss one. I mean, sure, it's hard to argue that this should go anywhere other than at the very top, I suppose. I mean, it does have a very sort of international logo, you could argue. The cross is obviously very common in Northern Europe, so not very original, really. Next we have Swedish fish, which I would definitely put in not quite Swedish. I know people are not going to agree with me on this, but it's a concept that only exists outside of Sweden. We call them just fucking godis, fisk, fan, liksom. They're not Swedish fish. To us, obviously. I think it was apparently like an American marketing campaign to market them as Swedish fish for some reason. Swedish fish are not a thing in Sweden, unless you're talking about a jävla abborre, liksom. Okay, death metal and heavy metal music. Just precis. This was also a pretty common response, I think. I don't listen to it, so I don't know. I only listen to God-fearing music. I don't know how unique Swedish death metal is compared to other bands and stuff, so I don't know, but Kind of Swedish, I guess. Okay, next we have Valhalla. Just precis. I would say this is not quite Swedish. All that Viking and Norse mythology stuff was all before Sweden was even a country, so it definitely shouldn't go any higher up than this, I feel. But, you know, we still have place names like Valhallavägen and stuff. So, not at the very bottom, you know. Things being clean and well maintained, a civilized and prosperous society. My goodness. Based on what you sometimes hear on the news that Sweden is some hellhole of violence and nasty things, I'd definitely say that Sweden is an insanely well functioning and, you know, prosperous society. Things just kind of work here, generally. For the most part. People generally trust the government. It's way more equal than most other countries. It's not maybe uniquely prosperous, but I think this belongs in very Swedish for sure. Healthy people. I mean, sure, generally. There are lots of Swedish people who takes fitness to the extreme, kind of, where they feel so much pressure to look a certain way that they are among the least chill people on earth. Some people you see like jogging at 5 o'clock in the morning at minus 15 degrees with a clenched jaw and eyes forward are as far removed from Snoop as you can imagine. Yeah, that part of Swedish culture is not very healthy at all. But in general, I would say, yeah, like Swedes have the luxury of making sure to take care of themselves. Kind of Swedish. Oh my goodness. Surströmming. Ja. Surströmming is no fucking joke. Even if you have a really big apartment, if you open a can anywhere, the whole thing will smell like a fucking corpse for a really long time afterwards. Opening up a can of surströmming should be considered a war crime, you know. But I think that pretty much no one under the age of 95 eats surströmming in Sweden on a regular basis. So therefore, in 2024, I'd say not quite Swedish anymore. Today, it really is just a meme, kind of. Meatballs, on the other hand, ja men vad fan. This was also a very popular answer on askreddit. Lots of people thinking of Sweden and meatballs. I think this is very Swedish, for sure. I know that, you know, taking a lump of meat, rolling it into a ball and frying it is not a very, not a very advanced way of cooking meat, I suppose. And therefore, it clearly exists in pretty much every culture, I imagine. But when I think of Swedish food, for some reason, Swedish meatballs and like mashed potatoes and lingonsylt is among the first thing that comes to mind, I think. Especially the ones from IKEA, just precis. Or plant balls. This one is hilarious. So the song Sweden from the Minecraft original soundtrack, which is really funny because I think it implies maybe that people don't know that Minecraft, the entire bloody game, is Swedish. But there is a song in the soundtrack called Sweden. But I looked it up, and the composer who made that song is actually German. So there we have our second not Swedish at all. It's German. Insanely good education system. I don't know about this one, honestly, because I've studied in the UK too, but that was in university. Maybe it's a bit different. And also when I think of like very good education systems, for whatever reason, Finland comes to mind before Sweden. So I would put this in kind of Swedish, maybe. Pancakes with sour cream. I really don't understand this one. I know Swedish pannkakor are different from American or Japanese, like puffy ones. But the sour cream? I'm interested to know what this is about. I feel like I'm missing something. But, you know, that's another not Swedish at all, I think. Volvo-bilar, jo men vad fan. This was also a very commonly commented one. I'd say en Volvo är en väldigt svensk bil. I don't have a driver's license, I've never driven one or anything, but it seems to be a very boring and reliable car. So, clearly very Swedish. Speaking of Finland, by the way, saunas are definitely quite common in Sweden, but they are definitely also not a Swedish thing. They're Finnish. At least how I see it, you know. So not quite Swedish. There are lots of saunas, but, you know, I would say this belongs to Finland and not Sweden. Gamla stan. Jag menar, vad fan. Ja, jo. It would be silly to put Stockholm in Svenskt som fan and not Gamla stan. Gamla stan is the old town in Stockholm, so the old Stockholm, pretty much. Clearly Svenskt som in i fan och piss och skit. Systembolaget, ja jävla mensan, just precis. I've mentioned systemet in many videos, I think, and it is a pretty strange thing. For those of you who don't know, it is a state-owned company that has a monopoly on selling alcohol above 3.5%. So literally all wine, most beers, every sort of hard liquor, you have to go to this specific chain to buy. They are closed on Sundays. They close at 3 p.m. on most Saturdays and stuff like that. Luckily, my goodness, they are pretty much everywhere, at least. This is also, I think, svensk som fan. Ja, inte så skitkul, men nu går vi vidare fan. The color light blue. I don't know who said this, but this is good. I like this. I don't know, fuck it. Like, I guess this is kind of Swedish. That blue is, yeah, why not? Astrid Lindgren and her books. This was nice. Lots of people on Reddit seem to know about, Pippi Longstocking, and lots of people knew about the Karlsson på taket for some reason as well, which I didn't know was that internationally famous. But yes, indeed, straight up to svenskt som fan. Herregud. Astrid, Jesus. Astrid Lindgren is not only incredibly famous abroad, but every kid in Sweden knows Emil i jävla piss, Lönneberga, and Pippi Långstrump and skit. High cost for a holiday. Sweden is expensive. I don't know, because I've never been on a holiday in Sweden, obviously. There are definitely more fancy and expensive places to visit, though, for sure. Norway, for one. But I would, I imagine it's quite expensive for most people, maybe. So, kinda expensive. No, kinda Swedish. The Nobel Prize. Just precis fan. I would also put in svenskt som fan. Oh, sorry. Very Swedish. My goodness. It would be in svenskt som fan if it weren't for the fact that the Peace Prize is handed out by Norway and not by Sweden. So it's not an entirely Swedish thing. Fjords! This is very good. I like this. This is a juicy one. So, fuck yeah, Sweden can claim fjords. I was recently in Bergen, actually, and got to see these beautiful fuckers for the first time in my life. And yeah, the Swedish fjords are a sight to behold, for sure. Oh my goodness. Okay, the government kidnapping children. This is a conspiracy theory you see all over the place online, that, somehow the Swedish government would be kidnapping children, which is definitely not true. So it's not Swedish at all. Complete fabrication. I would put it lower, but that wouldn't be very fair to Switzerland, I feel. Bluetooth, I think, is a Swedish invention, but it might have been, like, technically invented by a couple of Norwegian people working for a Swedish company, I think. I don't remember, but I think that's the case. And also, like, the logo and the name and everything are, I think, that the name of a Norwegian king, Blåtand. So maybe it's kind of Swedish, or maybe even lower. Fuck it. Let's put it there. A great personality. Oh, I vet fan. I have many Swedish friends, who have great personalities, but I don't know. I don't know. Okay, fine. Maybe up there. It's fine. Everything is round and smooth. This is nice. I like this one as well. For those of you who haven't been to Sweden yet, this is true. Everything is very round and smooth in Sweden. Like my ass cheeks. Maybe they're talking about Switzerland. Fuck it. Let's put it there. There it is. The Vasa Museum. Jaha. I've mentioned this as well. One of the most overrated museums in Sweden, for sure. I have no idea why it's the most popular one. It's just a fucking boat. Undeniably very Swedish, though. Arrogance. This is definitely not Swedish at all, I'd say. Swedish people are famously sort of modest. Doesn't want to take up too much space, never wants to show off and so on. So no, not Swedish at all. Never mind, I take back everything, because the next one is Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Another, my goodness me, very popular pick in Ask Reddit. I think Zlatan belongs here with Ingrid Bergman and PewDiePie. And Base Hunter, I guess. Very Swedish, for sure. His parents, I think, are Serbian, maybe, or something. But who cares? Everyone knows Zlatan as the famous, Swedish football player. Fuck yeah. He is cocky as fuck. I kind of like him. Kebab pizza, jo men visst fan. Just precis. Growing up vegetarian, I have never tried kebab pizza, but I know that it is a staple in every pizza place in every town and suburb in Sweden. You put kebab meat and dressing, I think, on a pizza, and you shove it up your ass. Very Swedish as well. Eurovision Song Contest. I suppose, yeah. People do care about Eurovision a lot in this country. I'm not a very big fan, and I remember not knowing that Sweden won, I think, in 2012 when I lived in London, and no one around me cared at all. I think Sweden has won a whole bunch of times, but I don't personally care at all. So I think it sort of belongs in kind of Swedish. Everyone knows H&M, but many people seem to not know that it is a Swedish company. I'd say that it's definitely not ranking as high as IKEA though, because most people, as I said, don't even know that H&M is Swedish, compared to IKEA where you get an enormous hay shoved in your face at the entrance, you know. So I would put IKEA at very Swedish, I think. And here we have Minecraft, the game this time, not the soundtrack. And yes, Swedish game, Swedish developer, now I think bought by Microsoft, but still, this is a similar situation as H&M, I guess. It doesn't really flaunt its Swedishness as much as IKEA to reach Svenskt som fan, but definitely very Swedish. Pyttipannan, oh. I believe this is a dish where you basically just take everything that you have left over in the fridge and you shove it in a frying pan and sort of hope for the best. Not to be confused with pitt I pannan, which is when you throw whatever penis you have in the fridge into a frying pan. But very Swedish, yes indeed. Friendly but reserved people. Just precis. I think this is pretty much spot on. A very good description of Swedish people in general. Generally, Swedish people are not going to go out of their way to be nice to you necessarily, but, you know, if you catch one in a corner where they can't escape, you'll find that they are generally pretty nice, I think. Incredibly reserved, though, as mentioned, to the point where small talk is simply a skill most of us don't have. Putting it all the way up there, there it is. We literally don't know how the fuck people do it. A sort of casual, relaxed conversation. We are very impressed with Americans and Brits who can just casually chit-chat with strangers in a way that seems natural. Buns. This was another one of those that was mentioned in both the international and Swedish forums. I assume we're talking about cinnamon buns. Someone in r/Sverige said something like bullar utan kum, which I guess means, yeah, none of that drenched in glazing stuff. Either way, very Swedish. There it is. Tennis. I don't know why someone said tennis. Maybe because of Björn Borg, who was a famous cricket player who played for India in the 50s. And I am wearing his underwear on my head. Kinda Swedish then, I suppose. Yay, Swedish chef. Ja, roligt. My goodness, my favorite Swedish character. Straight to the fucking top he goes. He's incredible. He speaks flawless Swedish, obviously, which is really impressive. I will not stand for anything other than Svenskt som fan. Yes, precis. Short days. I think I know where this is coming from. You know, obviously when winter is coming, like it is now, the days are getting very short in Sweden, and this is my main complaint about Sweden in the winter, that, you know, there's no sunshine ever, pretty much. But then, you know, it obviously also means that based on how the sun and earth work, that, you know, the very short days in winter lead to equally long days in summer. So on that very boring and pragmatic technicality, short days is not Swedish at all. Okay, sustainable living. Ja, men visst fan. I choose to represent this with a återvinningsstation. Just precis. Och vad fan är egentligen mer svenskt än källsortering? Ingenting. Nej, för fan en patriotisk ståfräs av bara tanken. Recycling activates something deep within me, you know. The Viking inside me stirs when he hears the words sustainable garbage disposal, you know. Top tier for sure. Anna Nyström. I have no idea who the fuck this is, but she sounds very Swedish. Got a very Swedish name. And she is, I guess, a celebrity. So there it is. Very Swedish. Du gamla, du fria. Herregud. It's the Swedish national anthem. It's the least inspiring of them all. The highest note in the whole thing climaxes on the word die, for fuck's sake. It's a shit song, but it's undeniably Svenskt som fan. Vodka is interesting. Absolut. Oh. I think this is quite Swedish, isn't it? But I still associate vodka for some reason with more with like Finland and Russia. So yeah, I'd say that it's kind of Swedish, I guess. 1958 is interesting. I think this must refer to when Sweden held the World Cup in football, and they made it to the final only to be beaten by Brazil, I think. You know, this to me is very Swedish, just because it's perfect. Like, you host something, but then you don't want to take the credit or be at the center of attention. So it's a perfect, very Swedish thing. LGBT rights. Fuck yes. That's a very good one, straight to the very top, I think. Many Swedish silly conservatives would not agree with me on this. Sweden really is very open to the point where most people just don't care who you fancy, kind of. Swedish massages is next, and I don't really understand this one. I have been told that a Swedish massage is kind of like a Swedish fish, like they exist outside of Sweden, but in Sweden, no one ever talks about them. They just go get a massage, you know. Can someone explain to me what the difference between a massage and a Swedish massage is? Because I have no idea. To me, this is not Swedish at all. Women football team. Just precis. Swedish men suck at football, but except my man, Zlatan, of course. But the women team seems to be doing really well. I don't give a shit about football in general, but women's football is really big here, so very Swedish, I guess. And then the final one from r/askreddit, the international answers, is fika. And obviously this was also one that people in r/sverige mentioned as well. The most sort of quintessential Swedish pastime, my goodness, obviously it has to go in Svenskt som fan. Fika is a core part of the Swedish identity. It's when you take a coffee break, most often with a cinnamon bun or another bun of some kind, and you chit-chat. Swedish people can do small talk when it happens under these very specific conditions. There it is. All right, so let's move on to r/Sverige then. The remaining ones is what Swedish people define as incredibly Swedish. I think the overlap was midsummer, fika, and immigration issues. Was there anything else? So maybe those three are the ones that best define Sweden. I don't know. But okay, the first one is socially awkward and conflict avoidance. That's right. I had a whole bunch of responses to the tune of this, you know, in the vein of this. Att alltid säga att maten och servicen var underbar även om du känner matförgiftningen redan nu. Inte hälsa på grannen som du inte ens har bytt dig att komma ihåg namnet på. Att kolla igenom nyckelhålet först så man är säker på att inte stöta på grannen. Att inte sätta sig bredvid någon annan på bussen. That one is incredibly Swedish, I think. So yeah, lots of these like avoiding people in general, being socially awkward, not wanting any type of conflict, just not wanting interactions with people in general. Yeah, as sad as this is, I would say, you know, especially the avoiding small talk one makes this a very Swedish thing. Swedish people definitely prefer passive aggression. Falukorv is a Swedish sausage, sort of shaped like one of those neck pillows you see people wearing on long flights. If you see someone on a plane wearing a falukorv around their neck, that's probably a Swedish person. I think it was a German who came up with it in Sweden or something like that, so I think kinda Swedish applies. Then we have lots of inventions and tools of different kinds. Skiftnyckeln, pacemakern, trepunktsbältet till fordon. That's sexy. I wouldn't call any of these sort of defining, really, for Sweden. It's not like Swedish people love their pacemakers more than other people, I think. But sure, Swedish people have invented a whole bunch of different stuff, so kind of Swedish. Okay, and then this next one I call self-abasing, which is, I don't know, like just like being shameful and belittling of being Swedish in general. Someone said, bland det mest svenska som finns är att klanka ner på och förminska oss själva och det som är vårt. Little bit sort of scary nationalist vibe there, but still. I don't think this is very Swedish. I think this is more of a British thing. Like in the UK, it really is baked into society to talk shit about Britain, you know. Not as much in Sweden, I don't think. There is lots of Sweden-loving Swedes, for sure. So I'd say this is not quite Swedish. Kalle Anka på julafton. Just precis, titta där. Straight to the top, my goodness. To me, there's nothing more Swedish than watching an American, like, Disney compilation for about 1 hour on Christmas Eve. Just precis. From the 60s or something, I think it is. Culture is strange as fuck, but yes, that's what every Swedish family does. It's really strange. Röda hus/stugor med vita knutar. Just precis. I think also this deserves to be at the very top. That's maybe one of the first things that I thought of. It is the, you know, maybe like the quintessential Swedish architecture, I suppose. I don't know if it appears in other countries quite in the same way. Maybe like in Norway. But still, this is like the jävla faluröda or whatever it's called. The color. Sverigedräkt. Oh, gud. It's like the Swedish national dress. To me, these ones just look really silly. They look like a lot of other like similar national dresses. It's not very unique except for the colors, I guess. I feel like there's like people who wear this are automatically more interested in eugenics and stuff like that. They would like me just because I look very Aryan, that kind of thing, you know. Biltema pölse. Now, as a very out of touch upper class twit, Stockholmer. I'm not quite sure what this is, but I think it's a northern thing where people go to Biltema, which is like a huge hardware store, in their traktor, and then they buy this outside the Biltema. I think that's what it is. Ett skrovmål, helt enkelt. I think this might be a little bit too regional, maybe, to be considered like, Swedish. So I would put it in kinda Swedish, even though many people might be very angry with me. I don't know. Only a few left and my battery is dying. So here we go. Allemansrätten. This is a law that says that you are basically allowed to camp in nature anywhere in Sweden, as long as you don't make the place dirty and leave lots of trash behind and stuff. I'm not sure how uniquely Swedish this is. I'm sure other countries have similar laws in maybe like Norway, for instance. So I would say kinda Swedish. Complaining. Specifically att klaga på allt trivialt och banalt eftersom man inte har så mycket att klaga på. Att sitta och muttra över att det antingen är för kallt eller för varmt. This made me laugh when I read that second one. It is very Swedish, I think, especially up in the north of Sweden, to just sit around and just talk about the weather in that kind of way. Svenskt som fan. There it is. Lucia-firanden. The celebration of Saint Lucy or whatever on the 13th of December every year in Sweden. We desperately try and fight off the relentless darkness by shoving candles in a poor woman's hair. I remember this was kind of cozy when I was growing up, and especially if it happened to be on a weekend when you were off school and the Christmas holidays was only like a week or so away, and you woke up really early to see the Lucia-tåg on television. That was pretty fun. I fucking hated being in the damn thing though in school when they forced a costume on you and shit. Anyway, very Swedish, just precis. Välfärd, just precis. Another svenskt som fan thing. Welfare, Swedish welfare, for sure, my goodness. I'm kind of surprised that it took this long for this to be brought up. Like, I would think that internationally Sweden would be almost most famous for its welfare state and the Swedish model and stuff like that. Jantelagen, just precis. I have talked about this. You're not supposed to think you are anyone special. You're not supposed to brag. You're not supposed to take up any space. You are not special. You don't have anything unique to contribute to society. You are just one out of everyone else, kind of. The opposite of American individualism and cockiness, I suppose. You could think what you want about it. Many people think Jantelagen is awesome. I think it is. It's got good sides, obviously, to it, but it's not great in general. It hinders lots of people, I think. But it is very Swedish, for sure. It's not uniquely Swedish, though, because it's more of a Scandinavian thing, but still. Vänlighet är typiskt svensk, someone said, and I've chose this picture of a friendly-looking guy. I don't know. I agree with this, I think. Socially awkward, for sure. Swedish people are, but they are also, in general, pretty friendly. I think it's automatically the case, just because if you live in a society where your basic needs and your security is kind of guaranteed, you are automatically more likely to be kind to others because, if you're not constantly scared of having to pay the bills and stuff like that, it's easier for people to be kind to others, I think. So, fuck yeah, on a fundamental level, I think very Swedish. Speaking of which, stor tilltro på regeringen. Just precis. Swedish people have incredible, high faith, I suppose, in their government. They believe the government more than many other countries, for sure. Taxes, for instance, is not considered a negative thing necessarily in Sweden, especially not compared to America, where, I don't know, if you mention taxes, people just shit their pants with anger. Also, Swedish people say in Sweden that they like paying taxes because they also have lots of stuff to show for it. Kind of, free healthcare and free education, all that. So, and the voter turnout is always very high compared to most other countries as well. So this, I would say, is svenskt som fan, the Swedish faith in the Swedish government. And then finally, we did it, everyone. We found the one truly defining thing about Sweden, ärtsoppa, pea soup. What a way to end this with a perfect, not quite Swedish. Ärtsoppa is not uniquely Swedish in any way. So there we go. Yay, we finished the tier list. Look at this. Wow, my goodness. Have we managed to define what Sweden is? My goodness, I don't know. If we look at the top tier ones, we have Midsummer, Nils Holgersson, Stockholm, IKEA, the Swedish flag, Gamla stan, Systembolaget, Astrid Lindgren, Friendly but reserved people, Swedish chef, recycling, Du gamla du fria, pride stuff, fika, Kalle Ankas jävla julafton. Red houses with white corners or whatever. Complaining, welfare, and faith in the government. There it is. That, I think, is what Sweden is, apparently, according to Reddit, at least. And me. I don't think that we're that off, at least. I don't think I don't think we forgot a whole bunch of stuff. Obviously, if you have any thoughts and opinions about all this, are my rankings completely off? Would you have ranked stuff differently? Do you have anything to add? Do you think something doesn't belong on the list at all? This was really fun, really interesting, I think, to see what like the difference between international people and their view of Sweden and what Swedes think of themselves. I've been recording for about an hour and a half now, I think. So I need to go and have dinner. But thank you very much for watching. This was fun. I should say, obviously, thank you very much to the Patreons, as always. If you want to, you can support what I do for $1 a month. Is there anything else I should say? Maybe this is kind of obvious as well, but this kind of list is obviously quite redundant because, like, what the fuck does it mean to be Swedish? It changes all the time. And it's also like I feel like I have way more in common with lots of other people from different countries as well, just because they happen to have similar interests as I do or something. Most of the stuff on this list I don't give a shit about, you know. How to end this long bloody video. If you've made it all the way here, my goodness, thank you for watching.